Hello there and welcome back to New Power Official. My name is Brandon. I hope you're all doing well. Over this past weekend I went to see Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse and holy shit was that movie amazing. I will for sure go rewatch it again, but in the meantime I needed to itch my spider tingle and play some Spider-Man games. So I played and ranked every Spider-Man game on the Game Boy Advance. Before I continue, make sure to like this video, comment with your favorite Spider-Man game of all time, and subscribe. The channel is growing and I want you to be a part of this journey as well. In last place, we have Spider-Man Battle for New York, developed by Taurus Games and released on November 14th, 2006 in North America and December 1st, 2006 in Europe. Battle for New York is a side-scrolling beat-em-up platformer game where you play as Spider-Man and the Green Goblin. Battle for New York is a prequel to the Ultimate Spider-Man video game on the Game Boy Advance, and the story is presented with cutscenes drawn by Marvel Comics artist Ron Lim. Out of every Spider-Man game on this list, Battle for New York had one of the best sprite renditions of Spider-Man, and the way the story is presented is visually stunning. The art drawn by Ron is fantastic, it really stands out, and in my opinion the way the story is presented is the second best amongst every game on this list. The animations are quite well done as well. Unfortunately, that's all I have for things that I liked about this game. Everything goes downhill from here. I played every game on this list for hours before writing any of this, and this was the second to last game that I played through for this video, and this was the one game that I didn't have the will to keep playing through. Gameplay wise, this game is a disaster. The combat is fucking terrible. First off, whatever character you are playing as has no reach. Every enemy has the appropriate reach, but nope, not you. You have T-Rex arms. Even when you're up close, you somehow won't land any hits. It's a Spider-Man game, the least they could do is make it feel like one. Web swinging is kept to an absolute minimum and your web cartridges empty out so quickly. It can be upgraded, but by the time you get enough points to upgrade it to its full capacity, you're going to be smashing in your head with your Game Boy. Seriously though, every once in a while when I'm making these videos, there's sometimes that one game that just frustrates me to a point where I just can't keep playing it. Another issue was that any hazards that you need to bypass to progress, for example a fire, will damage you even if you don't touch it. As long as you're close to it, even by a character's length, you will still get knocked back by it and take damage. While the levels where you play as the Green Goblin, which pretty much looks like the Hulk and a dragon had babies, are the easier levels to get through. The only proper way to get through them without dropping the shit off at your local thrift store is just spamming your fireballs. As long as you keep a distance and just spam it, his levels will be pretty easy. Where's the fun in that? There isn't. Spider-Man II on the Game Boy Advance was developed by Digital Eclipse and released on June 29th, 2004 in North America and July 9th, 2004 in Europe. Spider-Man II is a tie-in video game to the film of the same name and is a sequel to Spider-Man on the Game Boy Advance. This game is a 2D side-scrolling beat-em-up with a semi-explorable 3D New York that you swing around in between levels to get to the next. In this game, you could use XP points that you earn while completing levels to upgrade your abilities such as movement speed or swing speed or add new attacks to your arsenal. Spider-Man II loosely follows the plot of the film. They also include photo stills from the console version to represent the story. The sprites in this game are beautiful. Spider-Man is well done and the environments are good looking too. The villain sprites stand out and I love how this game looks. The reason for that is because this is basically a recycling of the first Spider-Man game. I like the inclusion of the side missions, which you can access by going to the yellow indicators in the 3D hub world. It adds variety to the levels in a sense that it's not directly tied to the main story of the game. I also really like the inclusion of upgrading your speed and health. It feels rewarding at the end of a level to gain enough XP to upgrade these things. Upgrading abilities is a different story, which I'll get to shortly. When you upgrade your movement speed, for example, it's immediately noticeable. I liked how much quicker you can swing around when you upgrade your swing speed. The base swing speed was way too slow for my liking, but once I upgraded this, it was a whole different experience. Spider-Man II, as I previously mentioned, recycled assets and mechanics from the first Spider-Man game on the Game Boy Advance. But unfortunately, instead of upgrading them or fixing any of the issues from the first game, it all remained the same. This is why I have this ranked lower than its predecessor, because all the issues from the first game could have been fixed, or they could have made significant enhancements to what I thought was already a good game in Spider-Man 1. The 3D hub where you swing from one mission to another simply doesn't work. In the first Spider-Man game, it's only a bonus level that you play through here and there, but this game dedicated a large portion of its gameplay to this 3D hub space. It's too choppy and you can't even tell if you're going to crash into a wall or fall straight down. It's admirable what they try to do here, but it just doesn't work. They should have kept it as a bonus level like they did in the first game. The boss fights are really bad in the first Spider-Man game, which once again I will get to shortly. In Spider-Man 2 not only are they bad, but they're also either too short or too long and very confusing. They were unable to find that sweet spot. Finally, even though you're given the option of using your XP to add new combat moves and abilities, they didn't make a difference in combat. I would purchase an uppercut for example, and I honestly wouldn't even notice it. Upgrading the combat moves felt really useless. Ultimate Spider-Man was developed by Vicarious Visions and released on September 22, 2005 in North America and on October 14, 2005 in Europe. Ultimate Spider-Man, just like every other game on this list, is a 2D side-scrolling beat-em-up and platformer. The game features two playable characters, which are Spider-Man and Venom. Spider-Man is much quicker and relies on restoring his health and web cartridges by picking up power-ups either scattered throughout the level or dropped by enemies. Venom is much slower and restores his health by just straight up eating people. Ultimate Spider-Man also features two villains that you will actually fight, which are Silver Sable and Carnage. Ultimate Spider-Man feels much more like a Spider-Man game than its prequel Battle for New York. Once again, I think Spider-Man's sprite is beautifully created. There's just something I really like about how this specific Spider-Man sprite looks. Also, the animations are actually really good. The idle animations for both Spidey and Venom were great, and the combat animations are very well done. The combat in Ultimate Spider-Man is solid. I think that the majority of the Spider-Man games on the Game Boy Advance really have lackluster combat, and this was one of the exceptions. Every hit feels flush, and the game just has a really nice balance of good combat and difficulty. At least when you play as Spider-Man. When you play as Venom, although he is much slower, it's easier to remain alive as all you have to do is munch on some goons. The majority of Venom's levels felt much longer, but not once did it feel like it dragged, so that is a plus in my book. I should have known not to go into the Ultimate Spider-Man game with expectations. I've played both the console version and the Nintendo DS version, and both are really good. I'm not saying this is a bad game, but I did feel bored after a bit of playing through it. Like I said, the combat is decent and the levels aren't overly long, but the level design and objectives are really repetitive. You always have to save hostages or deactivate a bomb or deactivate some lasers to move forward in the level, and this game just repeats the same objectives so many times throughout the game that I felt myself getting bored. Ultimate Spider-Man really lacks when it comes to villains you face off with. The other versions had Rhino, Electro, Green Goblin, Beetle, just to name a few, and we only got 2 of them on this version. Not a good choice. Not many boss fights to look forward to. As I mentioned, I don't think this game is bad, it's just average. Spider-Man Mysterio's Menace was developed by Vicarious Visions and released in 2001. Mysterio's Menace is a side-scrolling 2D beat-em-up and is a direct sequel to Spider-Man Enter Electro. This game features comic book style cutscenes to take you through the plot and story points. You are also able to get suit upgrades throughout playthrough that will give you armor and other abilities. There are also unlockable suits such as the symbiote suit. Mysterio's Menace has a non-linear way of progressing through the story, and I thought this was really cool. At the beginning of the game, you are presented with a scenario where 3 different crimes are happening throughout the city, and you get to choose which to tackle first, and each mission expands to at least one other location. I also really love the way the cutscenes are presented in a comic book art style. The cutscenes were vibrant and beautifully drawn. I also really like the level design. For example, in one of the levels, you are in a museum and you have to retrieve stolen artifacts from some ninjas. You have to take an elevator up and down and access different rooms to find the ninjas holding the artifacts. The same thing with the nightclub mission, where you have to explore different rooms and save the hostages. Also, the amusement park level is the stuff of nightmares. If I would have played this when I was a kid, I would have literally shat myself. The combat in Mysterio's Menace is such a huge disappointment. It's crazy to see that enemies have more fleshed out attack animations than the main character of the game. Each enemy can literally hit you with a 3-piece combo, and all you have to hit back is with this.
Don't fuck with me! I have the power of God and anime on my side!
It's obvious that not a lot of thought was put into combat. This is also pretty apparent in the boss fights. They're extremely easy. For the most part, taking out a main villain like Hammerhead or Scorpion wasn't even a quarter of the length of a level. They were done and over with within 2 to 3 minutes max. Spider-Man Mysterio's Menace is a really good time, and personally, I think it's easy to overlook the lackluster combat as the rest of the game is a really good time. Spider-Man on the Game Boy Advance was developed and released by Digital Eclipse on April 16, 2002, 2 weeks before the film's release. Spider-Man on the Game Boy Advance loosely follows the events of the film. When I say loosely, I mean very loosely. While in the film, the Green Goblin is pretty much the only villain that appears, in the game you have a variety of villains such as Kraven the Hunter, Shocker, and Norman Osborn in his elf costume, the Green Goblin himself. Spider-Man is a 2D side-scrolling beat-em-up with some 3D bonus levels added where you swing across New York. The game features levels across a lot of different areas such as a boat to a subway and even Oscorp Tower. You do it all from taking photos of Spider-Man to stopping a masked man from squaring up with a nun, and even busting moves with whoever the hell this old man is. I really love how this game looks. Spider-Man's character design and animation are amazing. The backgrounds are also very well done. The character sprites, especially the main villains like Kraven and the Shocker, look awesome. The bright and vibrant visuals draw me in and create an immersive experience. I also enjoy the comic book like combat where each hit is accompanied by an impactful words like POW. Overall, the visuals of this game are stunning and leave a lasting impression. The bonus levels where the game allows you to swing in a 3D environment were a good addition. If I would have played this back in 2002, my jaw would have hit the floor with these levels. I also think the level design is pretty good at times. It can get tedious having to backtrack because you missed a key or forgot to destroy a barrel, but the game feels fluid enough where it didn't bother me. While the animations are outstanding, they can be problematic. For example, when you web zip to a wall and are trying to avoid these electric things that will cause a lot of damage, once you web zip and land on the wall, an additional animation will play and will cause you to move into that electric thing, and it's so annoying. It's the same thing when you get close to a wall. Spider-Man might automatically climb it and there could be another electrical thing right on top of it. I felt like most of the times that you die in this game are ridiculous. Not once did I get killed by a bad guy or a boss, it was always an extra animation that would move me right into something that would get me killed. The combat is not so great either. The punches and kicks feel like they just don't land. It's like you're trying to hit at someone instead of hit someone. It's hard to explain, play it for yourself and you'll see what I mean, but in summary, the combat isn't good. Finally, the boss fights. Damn, these were so disappointing. Every single boss fight is so dull. They're pretty much the same. They take place in such an enclosed space and you pretty much just have to hit them a few times and they're defeated. There's no pattern you need to learn. Like in the Kraven fight, you just need to turn off 2 lights so he can't hide and pounce on you. But since the space is so small, there was no challenge. You can easily have both lights turned on the entire fight, and if he turns one off, it's a split second to turn it back on and right back to smacking him up. I put the second on my list because it was some of the most fun that I had making this video, and I can easily replay this above some of the other games on this list. When you think of Spider-Man 3, what do you remember? Is it the symbiote suit? Is it Tobey's killer dance moves? How about Spider-Man throwing his enemies into a fire, throwing them into a very powerful fan and letting the fan chop them up? All without the influence of the symbiote suit. No? You don't remember any of that? Well, I do, because I got to do it all on Spider-Man 3 for the Game Boy Advance. Spider-Man 3 was developed by Vicarious Games and released on May 4th, 2007 and is a direct tie-in to the film of the same name. Spider-Man 3 loosely follows the events of the film, and the plot is represented with still shots of the console version of the game. Spider-Man 3 is a side-scrolling beat-em-up and included Electro as an exclusive villain for the game. Instead of a 3D explorable version of New York like in Spider-Man 2, you are presented with an overview of a map similar to the Mario games. I'm gonna say right off the bat, finally, out of the Spider-Man movie tie-in games on the Game Boy Advance, we finally get good combat. The combat is seriously impressive, jumping from the first 2 movie tie-in games to this one. The fight animations are great. I like that they included health bars for every enemy, and it's so satisfying pulling an enemy towards you and hitting them or tossing them into the fire. The web swinging feels really quick and fluid, and the web zipping from wall to wall from floor to ceiling feels accurate. The boss fights are also great. They are a huge improvement when compared to this game's predecessors. They are much more entertaining to play through. They really put the abilities to use in Spider-Man 3. For example, when you have to save civilians from a fire, you may need to use your web pull to avoid the NPC from falling through the fragile floor. Playing with the symbiote suit was really fun. You feel like a wrecking machine. You can easily one-hit enemies and break down walls and pull enemies into a brutal uppercut. It's so badass. I appreciate that you can't keep the symbiote suit on the entire time. If you take damage, you will automatically lose the suit, and you have to defeat enemies and destroy crates to fill up a meter. And once a meter is full, you get the suit back. I think that the level design is a step up from Spider-Man and Spider-Man II. My first encounter with Sandman, I was ready to beat his ass, but instead you had to run away from him, and that entire level had my adrenaline pumping. Especially zipping onto the grapples that would launch you into the air made the chase seem even more fast paced. Spider-Man 3 was such a fun time. While the combat and movement and web swinging all upgraded, the sprites were downgraded. The sprites in Spider-Man 3 are not ugly and they're not bad, but when you compare them to the previous movie tie-in games, they took a hit in the sprite department. While this is a minor con in my opinion, I think it was a worthy downgrade considering the gameplay improvements that were made. Spider-Man 3 also felt significantly shorter. I felt like I breezed through the game very quickly. I wish it would have been a bit longer. Thank you so much for watching my ranking of every Spider-Man game on the Game Boy Advance. I encourage you to go watch Across the Spider-Verse if you haven't already, and give some of these games a try for yourself. Let me know in the comments below what your favorite Spider-Man game of all time is, and make sure to like the video and subscribe to support the channel.